India's successful mission, making history today by becoming the first nation to land near the moon's south pole. He said we are all very proud. He said we've conquered the oceans of difficulties and we have won. And he said that everything associated with the moon, we will be there now for everything, and said that our success belongs to all humanity and will help missions by other countries in the future as well. So let's bring in Neville Lazarus, who's in Delhi for us this lunchtime. So Neville, clearly a very proud moment for India.
Oh, absolutely, it is a proud moment. You could feel the palpable tension in the faces of everyone sitting in the mission control a few seconds before the soft landing. Everyone was tense. You could see the faces out there. And as soon as it did, there was jubilation. There's just cry and shouts and clapping all around. You saw the Prime Minister talking about how proud he was of the scientists that have worked on this, the moon mission. And he's also promised that India will be looking into having a manned mission as well in the near future, and also go beyond the surface of the moon, beyond the moon in all its endeavors to in the space exploration amongst any of the countries in the world. Yes, a very proud moment for every Indian out here, and I think it is something to be feted all around the world and for humankind.
Neville, thanks very much indeed. And as those celebrations continue, such happy face there at Mission Control, Tom.
The delight on people's faces, the achievement. The pictures just tell us all we need to know. It's hugely exciting, and this has changed the geopolitics of space. You know, India is now they've been a player in space for a considerable time, but this totally cements the nation's position. It's not just a vote in the science and ISRO, the Indian Space Agency, that delivered this. And I think the reason, apart from political prestige, geopolitically, the reason Narendra Modi is so pleased, this is a huge...
He is critically looking at the visuals.
जी हाँ, आप अपनी स्क्रीन पे देख सकते हैं कि हम लैंडर मॉड्यूल
People are applauding. Let us all wait to hear from the Secretary Department of Space and Chairman ISRO, Shri S. Somnath.
लैंडर मॉड्यूल पूरी तरह से सेफली और सॉफ्टली चंद्रमा की सतह पे लैंड हो चुका है। ये हम लोगों के लिए बहुत ही गर्व की बात है। हिंदी में एक कहावत है कि चंदा मामा दूर के, लेकिन अब हम ये कह सकते हैं कि चंदा मामा अपने घर के।
बहुत ही उम्दा. The hard work of the entire ISRO community has come to fruition.
आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी, नमस्कार. Sir, we have achieved soft landing on the moon. India is on the moon. Sir, I request our Honorable Prime Minister to address us and bless us. Thank you, sir.
मेरे प्यारे परिवार
successfully land on the South Pole. Applause broke out. Huge cheers for when the moment happens where India, the first ever nation to successfully land on the South Pole of the moon. Well, Christopher Consolis, Professor of Extragalactic Astronomy at the University of Manchester, has also been watching on. First of all, Christopher, what do you make? How big a moment is this for space exploration?
It's a huge moment. So all the congratulations to the Indian Space Agency for doing this. This is a remarkable thing, and as you said, it's something that hasn't really been done before. Of course, other countries have been to the moon, but not to this location of the moon, where there's a lot of interesting science and a lot of interesting discoveries that could be made. And so India should very much be applauded for this.
Can you just explain to us what sort of discoveries are they hoping to make here? I know there's been talk that there might be potentially frozen water in this part of the moon. What would that mean if they were to discover frozen water there?
So there's a couple of things that are interesting about that. So if you have water, it has a lot of potentials for not only just science, but also for things about, colonizing the moon, for using the moon as a resource, because water is very important, not just for life, but for doing any kind of activities. It can be very useful. So there's that. But also the south end of the moon, the south pole of the moon is very, very dark, and it's very cold. It's negative 240 Celsius, so it's very cold. And so it really kind of froze in the formation of the solar system at that time, because not much has been happening at that part of the moon since the moon was formed 5 billion years ago or so. And so if you can study the properties of the moon at that location, study what's in the ground, study what's in the atmosphere, study the seismic activity that has happened and that is happening.
Currently only a couple hundred meters above the surface of the moon. We're very, very excitedly watching it count down, about 200 meters to go. So this is kind of the area where you hold your breath and hope that everything goes correctly. They are currently repositioning it to make sure that it is going to touch down exactly straight, and it's looking good so far.
Can we tell how successful it will be at this stage?
I think one of the easiest ways to tell how things are going when we're looking at missions is looking at the faces of the people in the room. And so far, everybody looks very happy, very calm. Normally, if there's anything that goes wrong, so you'll hear the term nominal a lot. If anything is abnormal, people tend to raise the red flag and silence happens. But so far, looking very, very good, about 140 meters to go.
I can see that, and some of them are applauding as well. Looking forward to seeing how far away are we, do you think?
Only about a few minutes or so it looks like they're locking onto exactly where they're trying to touch down on. So this will involve some small repositionings. So you might see there in the diagrams little bits of it looks like air coming out of the animated spacecraft. This is the thrusting that is happening to try and realign that. And as I said, the South Pole is incredibly treacherous. There are boulders and craters and bits of debris that can be quite large. And so they're just making sure that they're positioning it correctly right now.
Well, I understand India's aiming for a close position to where the spacecraft landed last time but failed. Is that right?
I believe that was the original goal. I've yet to see confirmed exactly what crater they're going to be trying to land on the highlands of, but where they were trying last time is an area of a lot of scientific research.
I understand. Let's have a listen. They're approaching the moon's surface now.
We can see the Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, who is here to encourage us, and he is critically looking at the visuals.
मॉड्यूल पूरी तरह से सेफली और सॉफ्टली चंद्रमा की सतह पे लैंड हो चुका है। ये हम लोगों के लिए बहुत ही गर्व की बात है। हिंदी में एक कहावत है कि चंदा मामा दूर के, लेकिन अब हम ये कह सकते हैं कि चंदा मामा अपने घर के।
बहुत ही उम्दा। The hard work of the entire ISRO community has come to fruition.
There we have it, the Chandrayaan 3, India's mooncraft, successfully landing on the south pole of the moon. We saw the Prime Minister Narendra Modi there witnessing the historic event. India's the first to land this mooncraft on the south pole. First in the world. We've still got Dr. Sarah Webb with us from the Swinburne Institute of Technology. Dr. Webb, momentous occasion, but now what? What happens with the Mooncraft? It's still got work to do.
It absolutely does. This is a massive achievement, and a massive congratulations goes to everybody who worked on this project. So right now it's confirmed touchdown successfully. They will now be getting ready to deploy the lunar rover, which we should be hearing from in the next few hours, exactly what stages that will happen. And then over the next 2 weeks, it will be performing its science task. So I think the hard part is over, and very, very excited to see what is to come.
Indeed. I'm so glad we could share this moment together along with millions of others in the world who have been watching this really closely. Dr. Cyril Webb, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for
land a spacecraft. India has become the 4th country to land a spacecraft on the moon.
आप अपनी स्क्रीन पे देख सकते हैं कि हम लैंडर मॉड्यूल
People are applauding.
Chandrayaan 3 soft landed on the moon's south pole, an uncharted territory the scientists believe could hold important reserves of frozen water and precious elements. This was India's second lunar landing attempt after a failed mission in 2019. Numerous countries and private companies are in a race to successfully land spacecraft on the lunar surface, and it wasn't all that long ago, just a few days ago, in fact, that Russia had lost one of their landers in an orbit that decayed and put it down and crash landed on the moon. So it feels like we're back into a little bit of a mini space race. I know the U.S. is putting their program towards another lunar lander, I think in 25-26.
Okay, now India's lunar probe Chandrayaan 3 has landed on the moon's south pole. India is the first country to touch down on this part of the moon, which is believed to hold pockets of water ice. It's a moment to be celebrated. Let's get the latest now from our India correspondent, Rebecca Bandun. Rebecca, good afternoon. Just a few hours ago, President Ramaphosa of South Africa mentioned the fact that this vessel was headed to the moon from India, and there was a lot of applause here in the summit of BRICS in Sentin about it. It has happened. How did it go?
Yeah, it was certainly some very tense moments just ahead of that landing as it was making its descent towards the moon, because if we remember back in 2019, India attempted a similar mission trying to land on the moon's surface at the southern pole region, and it actually failed at the last moment. So everybody was holding their breath. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was watching virtually from South Africa, from Johannesburg. He's at that BRICS summit. He was looking on. He also looked a bit nervous, but once it was announced and it was seen that it had been successful and the spacecraft had landed successfully on the moon, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was there waving a little India flag, and people were cheering, applauding, hugging each other. Really, it's seen as a great moment of national pride for India, because this sees India becoming only the 4th country in the world to successfully land on the moon, and in fact it's the first country now to make a successful landing on the moon's southern pole region. And that's seen as significant because it's believed to hold frozen water, so it's going to release a rover in the next couple of hours from that spacecraft after the lunar dust around it settles down, and that rover will do some exploration, take some images, do some tests, looking for that frozen water. So really a huge step forwards for India in terms of its position as a space power in the world.
Yeah, we just played a video there of the staff celebrating at the Space Center there in India after they saw that it had landed successfully. And this, of course, has been in the making for quite some time. It must have cost a lot of investment. What is the main purpose that the Space Center in India wants to achieve?
Yes, that's right. So India has been investing heavily into this, and there's been some criticism in the past saying, should India really be spending money on its space program when there are other challenges that the country is, of course, facing, including poverty, the need to further develop infrastructure in the country. But the Indian government has really identified space as a key sector for the country's economy as well. So with a step like this, India now becoming a significant player in terms of space exploration with this mission, which clearly analysts are saying that it does become, having successfully landed now, that will actually help to boost investment into the space sector. That can then in turn create jobs, also help to boost the economy, of course. And India also has its eyes on other missions as well. It's planning another Mars mission for next year, where it wants to do some more studies on Mars. Eventually, it's also planning a manned mission. So India really has huge ambitions when it comes to its space program, and this is seen as something that will ultimately help to boost the country in terms of jobs and the economy. So that's why India does see it as an important sector, and now with this mission having been successful, that's really a huge step forwards for India.
Yeah, and because of that, Rebecca, finally, one would imagine they'll be planning another mission as soon as they get good outcomes from this lunar exploration.
Exactly, yeah, this will really give a boost now for India to look at other missions. Prime Minister Narendra Modi talked about potential studies that India could do looking at the sun, for example. So, and it's also got another Mars mission planned for next year. It's also looking at another Mars mission in 2030, and then there's that potential manned space mission, the first time that India would send people into space, and it's looking at doing that as soon as possible, really as early as next year. Potentially that's been in the works for some time, but certainly it will want to do that in the next few years. So really this will now give a bit of it will certainly give a boost to those ambitions.
Thank you very much, Rebecca Bandun, our correspondent in India, just sharing with us about this lunar landing of an Indian spacecraft for the first time in one part of the moon.
और साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी मिनिस्टर इस वक्त क्या
India has landed a spacecraft on the south pole of the moon 4 years after a failed attempt that saw a rocket crash due to a software glitch during a historic mission. Chandrayaan 3, or Mooncraft in Sanskrit, took off from a launch pad in southern India on July 14th and has today landed on the south pole of the moon, making India the first country in history to do so. India's successful landing will be a humiliation for Vladimir Putin, as Russia's attempt to land on the moon just days ago was unsuccessful. The highly anticipated Indian moon landing was watched closely as people crowded around televisions in offices, shops, restaurants and homes. Thousands prayed on Tuesday for the success of the mission, with oil lamps on the riverbanks, temples and religious places. India unexpectedly got into a race with Russia, which had planned to land its Luna 25 spacecraft in the same lunar region on Monday, but Luna 25 crashed into the moon after it spun into an uncontrolled orbit. India has now joined an elite club of countries to achieve a soft landing on the moon after the US, the former Soviet Union and China. Prime Minister Modi called the successful landing a joyous occasion.